Vice President Kamala Harris announced a $25 million investment into expanding the National Democratic Committee's I Will Vote campaign Thursday. Her announcement came after a federal judge ruled in favor of Georgia's new voting restrictions. The Wednesday ruling passed on blocking parts of the law ahead of next week's runoff elections. Greg Bluestein joins me now for more. He's a political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Hi there, Greg. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. So Georgia's newly passed election laws just survived a significant court challenge. Can you tell us what this means for the outcome of 8 other federal lawsuits on the docket?
Yeah, this was the first federal ruling that upheld the new voting law that passed after last year's election. The federal judge ruled that he wouldn't change the law in the 9th inning just before a round of legislative runoffs in Georgia that will happen over the next week, but he indicated he could step in for future elections. So we're not sure exactly how much bearing this has on the other 7 lawsuits challenging this law, particularly the biggest one, which is the Justice Department's lawsuit that was announced last month, that is much more far-reaching than this lawsuit.
And Greg, can you tell us what specific issues with the new voting laws were contested in this lawsuit?
Yeah, this lawsuit that was upheld was narrowly tailored. It specifically targeted new requirements that voters request absentee ballots at least 11 days before Election Day. That's a tighter timeline for mail-in ballots than previous Georgia law called for. But the federal Justice Department lawsuit filed last month, much more far-reaching, as I mentioned. It opposes voter ID requirements, ballot drop box limits, provisional ballot rejections, a ban on volunteers offering food and water to voters waiting in line. So that one is much more expansive. This one's more narrowly tailored, but still, if this one succeeds, it could end up leading to the striking down of other provisions in that very expansive Georgia law.
And the judge's ruling hangs on a 2006 case, which basically said that courts should stay out of changing election rules in the 11th hour. Do you think that that could actually change after next week's congressional runoffs?
Yeah, it could. Our next major round of voting isn't until November, and we're talking major votes. There'll be other special elections between now and November, but we've got municipal elections in Georgia, including for Atlanta City Hall. That will be a nationally watched election, and one of the first major challenges for this new election regime that passed in Georgia earlier this year. And so it gives you a little bit of wiggle room if a judge did want to come in and either strike down the entire law or strike down provisions of the law. So you could see more. It's hard to predict what these federal judges will do, of course, but you could see a little bit more breathing room after this round of legislative runoffs ends.
And in addition to changing the rules of future elections, Georgia has some outstanding issues on the 2020 election, believe it or not. Can you tell us what the latest is with this audit of votes in Fulton County?
Yeah, well, we're kind of still in a holding pattern with that. A county judge really struck down most of the argument that the pro-Trump forces had put forward in court. And so the Fulton County Elections Board, that's the elections board for Georgia's largest county, said that essentially that Superior Court judge's ruling put on hold, pushed aside, essentially eliminated any sort of push for they don't call it an audit, but an intense review of those absentee ballots, more than 100,000 absentee ballots cast in Fulton County. But the pro-Trump plaintiffs still say that there is a path forward. So we're waiting to see what that path forward could look like. But we certainly will not have a situation like they had in Arizona that you mentioned earlier, where it's a kind of a national spectacle, and nothing that happens out of this case will result in any sort of change in the outcome of the election, which, of course, Biden won in Georgia.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And of course, there have been already multiple recounts, including a hand recount in Georgia. I want to also ask you about First Lady Jill Biden, because she was in Georgia Thursday promoting COVID vaccinations, and she appeared with Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock. So can you tell us how Georgia is doing compared to the rest of the nation in getting vaccinated? In other words, why this big visit from the First Lady today?
Yeah, it's a great question because Georgia still struggles with low vaccination rates. And the First Lady went down to Savannah, Georgia, an area that is particularly struggling in South Georgia. And the worry right now is that as the Delta variant spreads in Georgia, the number of coronavirus cases and hospitalizations is starting to tick back upward, particularly in places with low vaccination rates. That's according to an analysis that my AJC colleagues did just today. The increases are only slight so far, but they mirror trends that we've seen in other states where hospitals are starting to fill up again. And that's the worry that the Biden administration and state bipartisan state officials, Republicans and Democrats, have in Georgia, is that they're trying to get those harder to reach populations. As Governor Brian Kemp, a Republican, said, he's trying to get fellow white Republicans to go get vaccinated because of that vaccine hesitancy that we've all heard so much about is particularly prevalent in rural areas in South Georgia.
Well, as I like to say, Georgia is always at the center of the political universe these days on multiple fronts. So, Greg Bluestein, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Caitlin.